The distress beacon had been silent for 3 years. Captain Vexenar of the Galactic Coalition survey ship Meridians. I stared at the readouts with all 4 of his optical stalks, each one processing a different layer of the impossible data streaming across his console. The human outpost designated Terminus Station sat in the void reaches, a region of space so hostile that even the war-hungry Kroth Empire had declared it strategically worthless. No rational species built outposts in the void reaches. The radiation storms alone could strip hull plating in hours. The gravitational anomalies could fold a ship inside out. And yet, 37 years ago, humanity had planted a station there and staffed it with 200 souls. "Sir," his communications officer chirped, her crystalline body refracting the bridge lights into nervous rainbows. "The beacon just activated. It's transmitting a message." Vexenar felt his respiratory sacs constrict. "Play it." Static crackled through the speakers, then a human voice, rough, tired, but undeniably alive. "This is Terminus Station to any Coalition vessel in range. We are still here. We are still operational. And we have something you need to see. Coordinates attached. Come alone. Come quickly. Humanity depends on it." The message ended. Silence filled the bridge like a suffocating fog. "That's impossible," Vexenar's navigator whispered. "They had supplies for 5 years. Maybe 7 if they rationed. No resupply ships have reached them. That was over 3 decades ago. Vexenar made the decision that would change everything. Set course for Terminus Station. Maximum safe speed." "Sir," his tactical officer rumbled, his massive frame hunched over his console. "The void reaches are a death trap. We could lose the entire ship. The humans built a station there and survived for 37 years, Vexenar replied quietly. "I think we can manage a few days." 3 days later. The Meridian's eye emerged from its final jump into a pocket of relative stability in the void reaches, and every crew member fell silent. Terminus Station hung in the darkness like a defiant monument to human stubbornness. It should have been a wreck, a twisted sculpture of metal and regret. Instead, it gleamed. Solar arrays the size of city blocks rotated in perfect synchronization. Defensive turrets tracked their approach with mechanical precision. Lights glowed in every window, warm and welcoming against the hostile void. But that wasn't what made Vexenar's blood run cold. Surrounding the station were ships. Dozens of them. Hulks from 100 different species, Kroth battlecruisers, Centauri merchant vessels, even a Hive Queen's royal transport, all drifting in a loose graveyard orbit. All dead. All stripped of anything valuable. "They've been salvaging," his tactical officer breathed. "For 37 years, they've been salvaging every ship foolish enough to enter the void reaches." A new voice crackled over their comms, human, female, with an accent Vexenar's translator struggled to place. "Coalition vessel, this is Station Commander Sarah Chen. Welcome to Terminus. Sorry about the mess outside. Parking's always been a problem out here. You're cleared for docking at Port 7. We'll have coffee waiting." Vexenar had studied human culture extensively. He knew about their beverages, their customs, their inexplicable fondness for chemical stimulants. But something in Commander Chen's voice, a warmth, a casualness, as if she were inviting him to a social gathering instead of a station that had been presumed dead for decades, sent his translator into recursive loops trying to parse the emotional subtext. "Acknowledged, Commander," he replied carefully. "We're honored to be here." "Oh, you're not here for honor, Captain. You're here because you're curious. Because you want to know how 200 humans survived in hell for 37 years. A pause, then a laugh, actual, genuine laughter. "Trust me, the answer is going to blow your mind." Port 7 was immaculate. The docking tube sealed with a pressurization hiss that spoke of regular maintenance and engineering expertise. Vexenar led his diplomatic team, 3 members, chosen for their experience with human psychology, through the airlock and into Terminus Station. The first thing that hit him was the smell. Not decay, not desperation. Fresh bread. Coffee. Something sweet and warm he couldn't identify. The air was clean, temperature controlled, humidity balanced. The corridor lights were soft, almost homey. Commander Sarah Chen waited for them at the end of the docking tube. She was in her late 50s, gray threading through her black hair, wearing a station jumpsuit that looked hand-patched but clean. Her smile was genuine, reaching her eyes, those remarkable human eyes that could betray so much emotion. Captain Vexenar, she said, extending her hand in the human greeting. It's been a long time since we've had coalition guests. 3 years, if I remember correctly. Vexenar carefully took her hand, mindful of his species' greater strength. Commander Chen. Forgive my directness, but, how? Her smile widened. How are we alive? How are we thriving? How did 200 humans survive in a place that kills everything else? She gestured down the corridor. Walk with me. I'll show you what humanity does best. They walked through Terminus Station, and with every step, Vexenar's understanding of human capabilities was rewritten. The hydroponics bay was 3 levels tall, a cathedral of green life thriving under carefully modulated lights. Vegetables he recognized, tomatoes, lettuce, something called potatoes, grew in perfectly ordered rows. But there were also plants he'd never seen, genetic hybrids created to thrive in high radiation environments. We started with 6 months of seeds, Chen explained, running her hand along a tomato vine heavy with fruit. Standard colony package. But Dr. Okafor, our botanist, she got creative. Spliced radiation resistance from extremophile bacteria into our crops. Took her 8 years, but now we grow food that actually gets healthier from the ambient radiation. That's not possible, Vexenar's medical officer stammered. The genetic complexity alone. Dr. Okafor had time, Chen said simply. We all had time. And humans, Captain, we're really good at solving problems when our survival depends on it. The engineering deck was next. Vexenar watched humans work with casual expertise, repairing systems with parts that clearly came from a dozen different species technologies. A power conduit used Croth energy relays. A water purification system incorporated Zentari filtration membranes. The reactor at the station's core hummed with a hybrid design that made his engineer whimper with a mixture of horror and admiration. Every ship that dies in the void reaches drifts here eventually, Chen explained. The gravitational anomalies pull them in. We salvage what we can, adapt what we can't. That Hive Queen transport. It had the most incredible biological recycling system. We integrated it with our waste management. Now we're 98% self-sufficient for water. You're using dead ships as a resource stockpile, Vexenar said slowly. You've turned a death trap into a supply chain. We're using everything, Chen corrected gently. The radiation for power. The gravitational anomalies for slingshot maneuvers when we need to retrieve salvage. The isolation for research that would be impossible anywhere else. Captain, the void reaches isn't trying to kill us. It's challenging us. And humans love a good challenge. They entered the station's central hub, a massive spherical chamber that served as community center, marketplace, and apparently a school. Children played in low-gravity courts. Adults traded goods at small shops. A teacher led a class through what looked like advanced quantum mechanics, using the station's own anomalous readings as teaching examples. You have children, Vexenar said, and he couldn't keep the wonder from his voice. You're raising the next generation here. 23 born on Terminus, Chen said, and her voice carried unmistakable pride. They'll never know Earth, but they know this. They know how to thrive in impossible conditions. They know how to turn death into life. She turned to face him fully. Captain, do you understand what we've built here? We didn't just survive. We created a civilization in a place where civilization shouldn't exist. Vexenar looked around the hub, at the humans living their lives with laughter and purpose, and felt something shift in his understanding of this strange, adaptable, terrifyingly persistent species. "Commander," he said carefully, "your message said humanity depends on what you have to show us. What did you mean?" Sarah Chen's expression grew serious. "Come with me to the research level. We've made a discovery. Something that changes everything we know about the void reaches. Something that explains why it's so hostile to most species." She paused. "And something that reveals why humans can survive here when no one else can." The research level was different from the rest of Terminus Station. Where the other sections hummed with life and warmth, this area felt clinical, purposeful. The corridors were lined with reinforced blast doors. Security checkpoints required biometric scans. The lighting shifted from warm yellow to cold blue-white, the kind that kept researchers alert during long shifts. Commander Chen led Vexenar and his team deeper into the facility, past laboratories where humans worked with equipment that looked far too advanced for a stranded outpost. Through observation windows, he glimpsed experiments he couldn't begin to understand, fields of energy suspended in magnetic bottles, samples of matter that seemed to phase in and out of reality, holographic displays showing mathematics that hurt to look at. "When we first arrived at Terminus," Chen began, her voice taking on the cadence of a lecture she'd given many times before, "we thought the void reaches were just a natural phenomenon. Radiation storms, gravitational anomalies, spatial distortions, all terrible luck in one concentrated region of space. We built the station because the Coalition needed an early warning system for threats coming from beyond charted space." She stopped at a massive reinforced door marked with hazard symbols from a dozen different species. Her hand hovered over the access panel. "But about 15 years ago, Dr. Marcus Webb, our lead physicist, noticed something strange. The anomalies weren't random. They had patterns. Rhythms. They were breathing." Vexenar felt his respiratory sacs flutter involuntarily. "Breathing? The void reaches are alive, Captain." Chen pressed her palm to the scanner. The door began its unsealing sequence with a series of heavy mechanical clanks. Or rather, they're the scar tissue around something that was alive. Something ancient. Something that died here billions of years ago and left behind a wound in spacetime itself. The door opened, revealing a chamber that defied conventional physics. The space inside was larger than it should be. Vexenar's spatial sense screamed that the room extended for kilometers in directions that didn't exist in normal three-dimensional space. At the chamber's center floated a structure of crystallized energy, pulsing with rhythms that seemed to sync with his own heartbeat. "We call it the remnant," Chen said quietly. "It's all that's left of a species that existed before the first stars formed. They were builders, Captain. Engineers on a scale that makes the Coalition look like children playing with blocks. They shaped spacetime itself, molded reality like clay. And when they died, when something killed them, they left behind ruins." Dr. Marcus Webb approached from deeper in the chamber, a thin man in his 60s with wild gray hair and eyes that sparkled with the fever of discovery. "Captain Vexenar. Excellent timing. The remnant just completed another cycle. You're about to witness something remarkable." The crystallized structure began to pulse faster. The air, if it could be called air, shimmered and warped. And then Vexenar saw it. Images. Memories. History playing out in fragments of frozen light. He saw worlds being born, shaped by beings of pure energy. He saw civilizations rising and falling in the span of heartbeats. He saw a war, a conflict so vast it spanned galaxies, fought with weapons that rewrote the laws of physics as they fired. And he saw the end, a desperate last stand, ancient gods dying to seal away something worse, leaving behind their tombs as warnings. The vision faded. Vexenar realized he was on his knees, his team beside him, all of them trembling. What was that thing they were fighting?" his medical officer whispered. "We don't know," Dr. Webb said, helping them to their feet with surprising strength for his age. The remnant shows us history, but it's fragmented. Incomplete. What we do know is that the ancient builders used their dying moments to create the void reaches as a barrier. A quarantine zone. They were sealing something away, keeping it contained. Commander Chen's expression was grave. And here's the part that should terrify you, Captain. The barrier is failing. The radiation storms. They're getting stronger because the seal is degrading. The gravitational anomalies. They're the spacetime fabric trying to hold together against something pushing from the other side. The void reaches are dying, and when they fail completely, whatever the ancients sealed away is going to break free. Vexenar felt ice crystallize in his veins. How long do we have? Our calculations suggest 50 years. Maybe 70 if we're lucky. Dr. Webb pulled up a holographic display showing mathematical models that painted a grim picture. The degradation is accelerating. Every year, the anomalies get worse. Eventually, they'll collapse entirely, and the barrier will fail. Then we need to evacuate the coalition worlds, Vexenar said immediately. Warn everyone. Prepare defenses. Against what? Chen interrupted. We don't know what's coming. We don't know its capabilities, its goals, its weaknesses. How do you defend against a threat so terrifying that beings who could reshape reality died just to contain it? She stepped closer to him. But here's what we do know, Captain. Here's why humanity has stayed at Terminus for 37 years. She gestured to the human-made interface. For 15 years, we've been downloading their knowledge. Learning their technology. And we've made progress, Captain. Real progress. We understand maybe 2% of what the remnant contains, but that 2% has already revolutionized our understanding of physics. Dr. Webb activated the interface. Holographic displays erupted into life, showing designs that made Vexenar's engineer emit a sound of religious ecstasy. Energy generation systems that draw power from quantum fluctuations. Propulsion drives that fold spacetime instead of pushing through it. Weapons that can manipulate fundamental forces. Defensive shields that exist in 5 dimensions simultaneously. And most importantly, Webb pulled up a specific schematic, instructions for repairing the barrier. You can fix the void reaches. Vexenar breathed. We can do better than fix them, Chen said. We can weaponize them. The ancient builders created the barrier as a prison. But they also left notes on how to turn it into a fortress. With their technology, we can transform the void reaches from a dying quarantine zone into an impenetrable wall. Whatever's sealed on the other side will never get through. But there's a problem, Dr. Webb said, and his excitement dimmed. The technology requires resources we don't have. Exotic materials that only exist in stellar cores. Manufacturing facilities capable of atomic-level precision across planetary scales. Most importantly, it requires manpower, thousands of skilled engineers, physicists, and technicians working in concert. 200 humans on Terminus Station can't do this alone. Commander Chen turned to face Vexenar fully. That's why we called you here, Captain. That's why we broke our silence after 3 years. Humanity needs the Coalition's help. We have the knowledge to save the galaxy, but we need your resources, your people, your support to make it happen. Vexenar looked at the schematics, at the impossible technology humanity had discovered, at the 200 souls who had survived in hell for 37 years just to protect a secret that could save trillions of lives. His decision matrix, the careful, logical framework that guided all Coalition captains, dissolved into irrelevance. I'll take your findings to the Coalition Council immediately, he said. But you should know, Commander, that the Coalition is bureaucratic. Getting them to commit resources to a threat they can't see, based on ancient warnings, could take years. Decades, even. Chen's smile was sharp, knowing. Then it's fortunate that humans are very good at convincing people to do things they don't want to do. Dr. Webb, show the captain our demonstration project. Webb's grin was almost manic. Oh, this is my favorite part. He led them to an observation window overlooking a section of space near the station. Below them, in the swirling chaos of a radiation storm, hung a small platform, no bigger than a shuttlecraft. 3 months ago, we completed our first field test, Webb explained. A miniature version of the ancient builder's technology. It creates a stable pocket of normal spacetime inside the void reaches, essentially, a bubble of safety in the middle of hell. He activated the platform. The radiation storm began to change. The chaotic energy flows organized themselves, spiraling into geometric patterns. The gravitational distortions smoothed out. Within seconds, a sphere of perfectly calm space expanded around the platform, pushing back the hostile environment like light banishing darkness. That pocket is 100 kilometers in diameter, Webb said proudly. The ancient technology can scale up indefinitely. Imagine thousands of these platforms, linked together, creating a network of stability throughout the void reaches. Not just a barrier, a new frontier. Safe space in the most hostile region of the galaxy. Vexenar stared at the impossible sight. How long can it maintain that field? Indefinitely. It draws power from the same quantum fluctuations that cause the anomalies. It's self-sustaining. Webb turned off the platform, and the calm sphere collapsed back into chaos. That's what we're offering the Coalition, Captain. Not just defense against an ancient threat, but the ability to tame the void reaches. To turn dead space into living space. Commander Chen placed her hand on Vexenar's shoulder, a gesture that would normally be considered overly familiar, but somehow felt appropriate. The Coalition thinks of the void reaches as a wasteland. But humans saw potential. We saw a challenge worth accepting, a mystery worth solving, and a home worth building. We spent 37 years proving that humanity belongs here. She gestured to the remnant, still pulsing with its ancient rhythms. The builders left their legacy for someone. They were waiting for a species stubborn enough to survive, curious enough to learn, and brave enough to take on a threat that could end everything. They were waiting for humanity. And now, Dr. Webb added, we're asking the Coalition to trust us. To invest in humanity's crazy plan to save the galaxy using technology we barely understand, located in a region of space that terrifies everyone else. It's a lot to ask, I know. Vexenar looked at the two humans, at the research chamber filled with impossible discoveries, at the station beyond that housed 200 survivors who had turned a death sentence into a triumph. He thought about his crew's journey through the void reaches, about the ships in their graveyard orbit, about every species that had tried and failed to conquer this space. And then he thought about humanity, the species that saw impossible as an invitation. Commander Chen, Dr. Webb, he said formally, I will present your findings to the Coalition Council with my strongest recommendation for immediate action. But I should warn you, they will have questions. Concerns. They'll want proof, demonstrations, guarantees that this isn't just human overconfidence. Chen's smile was radiant. Captain, we've had 37 years to prepare for those questions. We have data, simulations, working prototypes, and a track record of survival that speaks for itself. Let them ask whatever they want. Humanity didn't survive the void reaches by playing it safe. There's one more thing you should see, Webb said, pulling up a final hologram. We've been analyzing the remnants' deeper memories, trying to understand what the builders sealed away. We found something disturbing. The hologram showed star charts, ancient ones, predating the Coalition by billions of years. Highlighted in crimson was a network of connections spanning multiple galaxies, like a cancer spreading through the cosmos. The thing behind the barrier isn't a single entity, Webb explained, his voice grim. It's an infestation. A corruption that spreads from galaxy to galaxy, consuming everything in its path. The ancient builders fought it for millennia before they realized they couldn't win. So they did the only thing they could, they sealed it away in one region of space and hoped someone, someday, would be strong enough to finish what they started. The void reaches are the last prison, Chen said quietly. The final barrier between the infection and our galaxy. If it fails, we don't just lose the coalition. We lose everything. Every world, every species, every star. The infection will spread until there's nothing left but silence. Vexenar felt the weight of that knowledge settle over him like a shroud. Then we have no choice. Humanity has given us a chance, perhaps the only chance, to survive what's coming. Not just survive, Captain, Chen corrected gently. To win. To take the ancient builder's last gift and forge it into a weapon. To prove that the galaxy didn't make a mistake when it welcomed humanity into the coalition. Her eyes blazed with determination. We're going to save everyone, Captain. Even the species that don't believe we can. That's what humanity does best. End of Part 2. The Coalition Council chamber on Sanctuary Prime was designed to inspire awe. Crystalline spires rose 300 meters toward a domed ceiling that displayed the galaxy in real time, every member world marked by a glowing point of light. Representatives from 47 species sat in concentric rings, their translator implants humming softly as they processed Captain Vexenar's report. He had been speaking for 2 hours. Presenting data, showing recordings from Terminus Station, explaining the threat with every ounce of eloquence he possessed. The response was exactly what Commander Chen had predicted, skepticism wrapped in bureaucratic caution. Ancient warnings from a dead species, High Chancellor Mortek rumbled, his rocky carapace grinding with dismissive sounds. Captain, you're asking us to commit a quarter of the Coalition's resources based on human interpretation of alien technology. Technology that, by your own admission, they barely understand. With respect, Chancellor, Vexenar replied, keeping his tone measured, the humans at Terminus Station have survived for 37 years in conditions that would kill any of our species within days. Their understanding may be incomplete, but their results are undeniable. Senator Quilix of the Zentari delegation fluttered her wing membranes in agitation. They survived by salvaging our ships. By scavenging from those who died in the void reaches. For all we know, they've been luring vessels to their deaths deliberately, using distress beacons to attract victims. That's absurd, Vexenar's medical officer interjected, unable to remain silent. We saw their hydroponics, their engineering, their research. They're not pirates, they're pioneers. Pioneers who conveniently discovered ancient technology that only responds to humans, a Kroth war chief growled. How remarkably fortunate for them. And how convenient that this technology requires coalition resources to implement their solution. The debate raged on, voices rising in a dozen languages, translator implants struggling to keep up. Vexenar watched his carefully prepared presentation crumble against the weight of political inertia and interspecies distrust. Then the chamber doors opened. Commander Sarah Chen walked in, flanked by Dr. Marcus Webb and 2 other humans from Terminus Station. They wore clean jumpsuits bearing the Coalition emblem, a detail Vexenar noted with approval. They didn't request permission to enter, didn't wait for an invitation. They simply walked to the center of the chamber and stood there, for humans among hundreds of alien representatives, completely unintimidated. High Chancellor Mortek's voice boomed across the chamber. This is a closed session. How did you gain access? Article 7 of the Coalition Charter, Chen interrupted calmly. Any species facing an existential threat has the right to address the Council directly. We invoked it 6 hours ago. Your security clearance office has been trying to contact you, but I understand you've been in session. She smiled pleasantly. We thought we'd save everyone time and just come in. The chamber erupted in protests. Chen waited until the noise died down, then continued as if nothing had happened. Members of the Council, my name is Sarah Chen. I've spent 37 years protecting something you don't believe exists. I've watched 43 of my people die from radiation exposure, equipment failures, and the simple brutality of living in the void reaches. I've raised children in a place where childhood shouldn't be possible. And I've done it all while cracking open the greatest mystery in galactic history. She pulled out a small device, no larger than her palm, and activated it. A hologram exploded into life above the council chamber, filling the air with images that made even the most skeptical representatives gasp. "This is the Remnant's latest revelation," Dr. Webb said, taking over the presentation with academic precision. "Recorded 3 days ago. The ancient builders didn't just leave us warnings, they left us a countdown." The hologram showed the barrier's degradation in brutal detail. Mathematical projections painted in colors that crossed species' visual spectrums. The timeline was undeniable, 42 years until total collapse. Not 50. Not 70. The degradation was accelerating faster than their initial calculations. 42 years, Chen repeated. 1 generation. Time enough for every species here to believe the danger isn't real, to argue about jurisdiction and resource allocation, to form committees and subcommittees while the galaxy's last defense crumbles. She looked directly at High Chancellor Mortek. Or time enough to do something about it. "You speak with great confidence for a species that's been in a coalition for less than a century," Mortek said coldly. "What makes you think humanity has the right to dictate galactic policy?" "We don't have the right," Chen agreed. "We have the knowledge. We have the only technology that can fix this. And we have the will to see it through, even if every other species in this chamber decides it's too expensive, too risky, or too much of a hassle to save themselves." She walked slowly around the chamber's center, making eye contact with representatives from every species. "You want to know why the Remnant only responds to humans? Dr. Webb and I have a theory. The ancient builders were like us, not biologically, but psychologically. They were survivors who refused to accept extinction. When they died sealing away the infection, they left their legacy for someone who would understand what they'd sacrificed. Someone stubborn enough to finish what they started. They left it for someone who wouldn't give up," Dr. Webb added quietly. "Someone who would see 37 years of hardship not as suffering, but as an investment. Someone who would raise children in hell because they believed in a future worth fighting for. The builders left their legacy for humanity because they recognized something in us that most of you don't see." "And what's that?" Senator Quilix challenged. Chen's smile was fierce. "That we're too stupid to know when we're beaten. Too stubborn to accept impossible odds. Too determined to let a little thing like cosmic horror stop us from protecting what we love." She turned back to the High Chancellor. "You're right to be skeptical. Humanity is young, inexperienced, overconfident. We've made mistakes that embarrassed us in front of species with millennia of civilization. But we've also survived the void reaches. We've cracked ancient technology. And we're offering you a chance to live." The chamber was silent. Chen let that silence stretch, let the weight of her words settle over the council like snow. "Here's what we're proposing," Dr. Webb said, activating another set of holograms. Phase 1, immediate deployment of stabilization platforms throughout the void reaches. We have the schematics. We need your manufacturing capacity to build them on scale. Timeline, 6 months for initial deployment, 18 months for full coverage. Phase 2, research integration. We share everything the Remnant has taught us, all of it, no restrictions. Your scientists, your engineers, everyone gets access. We accelerate the learning curve from decades to years. Timeline, ongoing, but critical discoveries shared immediately. Phase 3, defensive network. Using ancient builder technology, we transform the void reaches from a passive barrier into an active defense system. If something tries to break through, the network responds. Timeline, 20 years to full operational capacity. Chen stepped forward. Total estimated cost, 17% of the coalition's combined resources over 40 years. Yes, it's expensive. Yes, it's the largest project in galactic history. But consider the alternative. The hologram shifted, showing simulations of the barrier failing. The infection spreading. Worlds going dark one by one, like candles in a windstorm. The mathematics were merciless. Within 50 years of barrier collapse, 94% of coalition space would be consumed. That's what happens if we do nothing, Chen said softly. That's the price of caution. Of waiting for absolute proof before taking action. Of letting bureaucracy and skepticism paralyze us while the universe's greatest threat prepares to devour everything we've built. She looked around the chamber one final time. The ancient builders gave everything to buy us time. 42 years. That's their gift, their last act of defiance against oblivion. Humanity is asking you to honor that sacrifice. To trust that we're not crazy or delusional or trying to scam resources. To believe that sometimes the youngest species in the room is the one that sees the danger most clearly. And if we refuse? High Chancellor Mortek asked. Chen's expression didn't change. Then humanity implements the plan alone. It'll take us longer, maybe too long. We'll probably fail. But we'll die trying to save you anyway, because that's what the builders would have done. That's what their legacy demands. Dr. Webb nodded. We didn't survive 37 years in the void reaches to give up now. With or without coalition support, Terminus Station will continue its mission. The only question is whether the rest of the galaxy wants to help us, or watch us fail from a safe distance. The silence that followed was profound. Vexenar watched centuries of coalition protocol collide with the simple, terrible truth: humanity was right. The danger was real. And they were the galaxy's only chance. High Chancellor Mortek stood slowly, his massive frame creaking. The Council will deliberate. Commander Chen, Dr. Webb, you will remain on Sanctuary Prime until we reach a decision. Captain Vexenar, you will serve as liaison between Terminus Station and the Coalition. How long will deliberations take? Chen asked. As long as necessary. We have 42 years, Chancellor. I'd prefer not to waste them. A sound rippled through the chamber, something between respect and amusement from 100 different species. Mortek's rocky features might have smiled. It was hard to tell. Commander, I begin to understand why the ancient builders chose humanity. Very well. 72 hours. We'll have an answer for you. 68 hours later. Vexenar found Commander Chen on one of Sanctuary Prime's observation platforms, watching the sunset over the Council's administrative city. She looked tired, the kind of exhaustion that came from carrying impossible weight for too long. They voted yes, he said without preamble. 41 species in favor. 4 opposed. 2 abstained. The coalition is committing full support to the Terminus project. Chen closed her eyes. For just a moment, he saw her mask slip, saw the fear, the hope, the desperate relief of someone who'd been holding her breath for 37 years. Thank you, she whispered. For believing us. For bringing this to the Council. For. You convinced them, Commander. Not me. You showed them what humanity is capable of when survival is at stake. She laughed, wiping her eyes. We're good at that. Surviving. Even when we shouldn't. The Council has already begun preparations, Vexenar continued. Manufacturing facilities across Coalition space are retooling for the stabilization platforms. Research teams from every member species are being assembled. And they're asking Terminus Station to serve as the central coordination hub for the entire project. Of course they are, Chen said wryly. We're the only ones who actually understand the technology. There's more. Vexenar pulled up a communication on his datapad. The Council is officially designating the Void Reaches as humanity's protectorate. Full administrative control, resource allocation authority, and defensive coordination. In 42 years, when this is all over, the entire region will be recognized as human sovereign territory. Chen stared at him. That's a quarter of unexplored space. Consider it payment for services rendered. And an investment in humanity's future. He paused. The Council recognizes that your species will be on the front lines of this fight. It seems only fair that you reap the rewards if we succeed. When we succeed, Chen corrected firmly. Humanity doesn't plan for failure. They stood together in companionable silence, watching the alien sunset paint the sky in colors that Earth had never known. In the distance, the Council's towers gleamed, monuments to 1,000 different species working together. Do you think we can really do this? Vexenar asked quietly. Stop something that destroyed the ancient builders? The builders tried to defeat the infection, Chen replied. We're not trying to defeat it. We're just trying to keep it locked up. That's a much easier problem. She smiled. Besides, we have something they didn't. What's that? 47 species working together. Different perspectives, different strengths, different ways of seeing the universe. The builders were alone when they made their last stand. We're not. That has to count for something. 41 years, 7 months later. Terminus Station had changed. What had been an outpost of 200 survivors was now the beating heart of the largest construction project in galactic history. Thousands of ships orbited the station. Millions of workers from every coalition species lived in modular habitats extending from the original structure like branches from a tree. The void reaches themselves had been transformed. Stabilization platforms, now numbering in the tens of thousands, created a network of safe zones throughout the region. Research stations studied the ancient technology, pushing the boundaries of understanding with every discovery. Defense platforms stood ready, armed with weapons that bent spacetime itself. Commander Sarah Chen, now Admiral Chen, though she still hated the title, stood in the command center watching the final preparations. She was 79 years old, her hair completely white, her face mapped with decades of hard decisions. But her eyes were still sharp, still determined. Dr. Marcus Webb stood beside her, somehow even more energetic at 81 than he'd been at 60. All platforms report green status, he said cheerfully. The network is complete. Every inch of the void reaches is covered. And the barrier? Chen asked. Degrading on schedule. 12 hours until critical failure. He grinned. Right on time. Captain Vexenar, now Admiral Vexenar, commander of the Coalition Defense Fleet, joined them at the observation window. All ships are in position. Every species contributed vessels. We have the largest assembled fleet in Coalition history standing ready. Let's hope they don't need to fire a shot, Chen said. The whole point of this exercise is containment, not combat. The hours ticked down. Chen watched the holographic displays showing the barrier's status, the network's readiness, the positions of 1,000 different moving parts. 41 years of preparation coming down to a single moment. At the 6-hour mark, the remnant activated on its own for the first time in decades. Images flooded through the network, not warnings this time, but something else. Something that felt like approval. Pride. The builders are watching, Dr. Webb whispered. They know what we're doing. At the 1-hour mark, the barrier began its final collapse. Alarms blared across every station, every ship, every platform. The infection was moving, testing its prison walls, preparing to break free. Network status? Chen demanded. All platforms synchronized. Energy levels nominal. We're ready. Then let's finish what the builders started. Activate the network. Across the void reaches, 10,000 stabilization platforms came online simultaneously. They didn't just create pockets of stability, they wove themselves together, forming a tapestry of interconnected fields that spanned the entire region. Ancient builder technology, enhanced by 41 years of coalition research, merged into something new. Something stronger than the sum of its parts. The barrier didn't just hold. It solidified. The degrading spacetime fabric was reinforced, strengthened, transformed from a passive prison into an active fortress. The infection pressed against its cage, sensing the change, and found itself facing something the ancient builders had never achieved, not a temporary seal, but a permanent solution. Network holding stable, Dr. Webb reported, his voice trembling with emotion. Energy draw is self-sustaining. The platforms are feeding off the same quantum fluctuations that were causing the degradation. It's a perpetual system. It'll hold forever, Chen finished. It'll hold forever. Cheers erupted across the command center. Through the view screens, she could see celebrations breaking out on every vessel, every station, every platform. 47 species celebrating together, united in victory. Admiral Vexenar approached her, extending his hand in the human gesture they'd shared 41 years ago. Congratulations, Admiral Chen. Humanity has saved the galaxy. She took his hand, gripping it firmly. Humanity built the network. But the coalition made it possible. This victory belongs to everyone. The Council wants to hold a ceremony. Awards, commendations, formal recognition of Terminus Station's role. Chen shook her head. Later. Right now, I want to go home. To the station. To see the place that started all this. She walked through Terminus Station's corridors, through the sections that had existed for 41 years and the newer additions that housed thousands. Children played in corridors where radiation storms had once raged. Gardens flourished where death had reigned. And everywhere, humans and aliens worked together, lived together, building a future in the void reaches. She found herself in the original hydroponics bay, the one Dr. Okafor had cultivated those decades ago. The tomato vines were still there, maintained by descendants of the original colonists. A memorial plaque listed the 43 who had died in those early years, their names preserved in bronze. We did it, she said to the empty air, to the ghosts who'd sacrificed everything. We survived. We solved the puzzle. We saved everyone. Outside the station, the void reaches hummed with the energy of the network, transformed from humanity's prison into humanity's triumph. The infection pressed against its cage and found no weakness. The ancient builder's last gift had found worthy inheritors. And in the remnants chamber, deep in the research level, the crystallized structure pulsed with a rhythm that might have been satisfaction. The builders had waited billions of years for someone to finish their work. Humanity, stubborn, persistent, impossibly determined humanity, had not disappointed them. The galaxy was safe. The void reaches were humanity's. And 200 survivors who had refused to accept death had become the architects of galactic salvation. Commander Sarah Chen, no, Admiral Sarah Chen, smiled at the tomato vines and the memorial plaque, at the past and the future intertwined. Not bad, she said to herself, for a species too stupid to know when we're beaten. Behind her, unheard and unseen, the remnants' light pulsed in what might have been laughter.